All right, y'all ready? Let's finish up 13. We'll finish up 13, see if we can't get through all of 14 tonight. Because that'll get us halfway through Matthew. So hopefully by the summer we'll have this knocked out and be good to go. Like I said, we'll kind of fly through when Jesus is just doing, and then again, 16, we'll catch him where he goes to Caesarea Philippi with his disciples, and we'll kind of, again, we'll slow down on that, really isolate what he's saying in those moments, and then speed back up, 17, 18, get into all the triumphal entry and all that. We'll get to the Olivet Discourse, slow down, and then hit the crucifixion, resurrection, all that good stuff. So that's sort of the plan. All right, the sheets, you have 2 sheets, all right? So hopefully you have 2 sheets with you. And what I have on there is I have Matthew at the top, and then I have Mark and Luke down below it. Okay, does that make sense? And the smaller font is Mark and Luke. So, and I tried to get the passage numbers, but I probably didn't do it perfectly on all of them. So, all right, y'all ready? Let's roll. Okay, the end of 13, verse 54. He went to his hometown and began to teach them in their synagogue, so that they were astonished and said, "How did this wisdom and these miracles come to him? Isn't this the carpenter's son? Isn't his mother called Mary? And his brothers, James, Joseph, Simon, and Judas, and his sisters, aren't they all with us? So where does he get all these things?" And they were offended by him. But Jesus said to them, "A prophet is not without honor except in his hometown and in his household." And he did not do many miracles there because of their unbelief. Okay? So this is not a good going back home, all right? So anybody else, anybody from around here? This is your hometown. The people know you well around here. So my hometown is Gilmer. That's my birthplace. I wouldn't call it my hometown. So, and then I've got a little bit of Marshall, but Tallahassee's kind of home for me. So I always joke that at some point in my life, Gilmer's going to have a sign out front, home, birthplace of Bubba Rainwater. I don't know why. I don't know what I'm going to do, but that's just sort of, every time I drive into Gilmer, I'm like, that's where the sign's going to be, right there. I don't know why. So for being pastor above and beyond the call of duty. All right, he went to his hometown. Hometown, this is, it uses the Greek phrase patris, all right? We get our word patre from this, padre, father. So the place of his father is the implication here. He goes to this hometown. Now, where has he been? He's left Nazareth, and what town has he sort of adopted? That's a simple question. Capernaum, very good. Okay, so Capernaum, like I said, you have the Sea of Galilee, and Capernaum is up here at 12 o'clock, okay? Now, Nazareth is going to be over here about 25 miles southwest, okay? And it's out in the middle of the desert, all right? It's actually built onto the side of a hill, okay? So it's a small town. It was about 60 acres. Maybe about 500 people, they think, at its heyday, about 500 people lived there. So nothing to brag about, obviously, because what does Nathaniel say? Yeah, what can anything good come from Nazareth? Okay, it's like, they don't even have a good football team. It's nothing. It's some little town out in the middle of nowhere. Capernaum was this city where you had all this fishing, you had all this trade coming through there, all this stuff. Nazareth was that city way out there that everybody forgot about, okay? So he goes back to his hometown and began to teach them, okay? Now, Mark and Luke give us a hint. What day was this? On what day would he have gone into the temple and began to teach them? Sabbath day. And I've always said, when you see the word Sabbath in the text, you want to read that passage, okay? Because Jesus is going to do something in there that's going to upset the religious folks, all right? You see Sabbath, he's going to poke. He's going to do something that gets everybody upset, okay? So, and he began to teach them. You can look down in Luke. Luke is what he teaches. It's Isaiah 61, all right? This is a messianic sort of stanza of a prophecy. And look, if you can look on your sheet in verse 18, it says, "The Spirit of the Lord is on me because he has anointed me to preach the good news to the poor." That word anointed is the Hebrew word Mashiach, okay, from which we get our word what? Messiah, or Christ in the Greek, okay? So this is the implication that this one who is anointed is going to come in Isaiah 61. Proclaim freedom to the captives, recovery of sight to the blind, set the oppressed free, to proclaim the year of the Lord's favor. All right? Very much a messianic hymn. And then you see this. And then he says, today, as you listen, this scripture has been fulfilled. Okay? So when you read in Matthew, it says he goes in there, he teaches in their synagogue. Note that he says that. It's their synagogue. It's not God's synagogue, all right? Which is a little dig that Matthew throws at him, all right? So they were astonished. This is the word ekpleso. Ekpleso is to strike or to hit someone. So they were struck by this. Right? They were amazed. Sometimes some translations are amazed. All right? It's like somebody punched you in the face. And they said, how did this wisdom and these miracles come to him? And how did they describe Jesus? How did they describe him? What does the text say? Isn't this the carpenter's son? Now, carpenter, is that a glorified, amazing career to have? All right. Now, this is the word tekton, all right? So it's not strictly somebody who works with wood, builds furniture, that kind of thing. Tekton is one who would work with either wood or stone, mostly stone. So he was more of a stonemason. This is kind of the implication of the word tekton than carpenter. So it's sort of a generic term for someone who works with their hands, works with materials. So that's the carpenter's son. How could he know these things? All right? The implication being what? Where has he not been? If he is the carpenter's son, where has he not been? And how could he know these things? He hasn't been studying under some rabbi. So how could you be a rabbi, have these teachings, have this ability to teach if you've never sat under someone and taken their yoke upon you? How can you have a yoke to put on your disciples? So they're amazed, they're astonished by this. And he's doing these miracles. That's got to be weird. Why? How many miracles had he done in Nazareth growing up? And don't tell me about all these gospel of whoever, synoptic gospels that get thrown out there of Jesus cast a spell on some kid one day. No, don't read those. Just don't read those, all right? Do we have any indication that he was doing miracles as a kid in Nazareth? All right, and that's going to be an issue. That's going to be an issue for them in Luke's passage here, all right? So this is the carpenter's son. Isn't his mother called Mary? Now, normally you wouldn't call somebody by their mom's name or identify them by their mom's name. I mean, how many times in Scripture does it say, and this was this, son of, son of, son of, son of? How often does it say son of this mom? It's very rare that we get this. So what do you think the people of Nazareth are implying when they say, isn't this Mary's oldest son, Mary's kid? Remember when Mary came back from Judea, 3 months pregnant? Isn't that this son? Again, what are they doing? What are the people of Nazareth doing to him? How can he know these things when this is who this is? All right? So we're not sure, but these are subtle digs that may be thrown at him. His brothers, James, Joseph, Simon, and Judas, his sisters, aren't they all with us? So where does he get all these things? And they were what? What does the text, your text say? Offended? Scandalizo in the Greek. All right? Scandalized. All right? If anyone causes one of these little children to be scandalized, to turn away, they are offended by this. They don't go, oh, this is Jesus, the one from Nazareth, this is the Messiah. No, they're going, no, we're not going to believe him. We're not even going to give him credit for what he is saying and what he's doing. No. They're offended by this, so they turn away from him. That's kind of what this implies, all right? Offended by him. But Jesus says and calls him out on it. A prophet is not without honor except in his hometown and in his own household. All right? So what do his brothers do? Who actually in Jesus' family ever kind of goes, yeah, you are the Messiah? James eventually does. But what does he do with the Festival of Tabernacles right 6 months before Jesus is crucified? Why don't you go to Jerusalem where they're trying to kill you? Because that's what messiahs do. They go and pronounce themselves to be the Messiah. Why don't you go? He knows full well they're trying to kill him. So what's little brother James trying to do to him? Trying to off him, all right? Kind of the implication is no. And so you have these guys. We don't even know about his sisters. We have nothing there. But not only in his hometown, but also in his household, all right? In Luke, the implication is you did all these things in Capernaum. Why don't you do them here in Nazareth? All right? But they're offended. So he's going to be very limited as to the miracles that he does there. Now, I'm not saying, hear me very clearly, I'm not saying their faith disallowed him from doing this. All right? We don't connect those dots, okay? Don't make it where Jesus would have done miracles, but the people's faith prevented him from being able to do that, all right? Jesus' ability to do things was never tied to the faith of the people, all right? He just didn't, all right? Mark actually even says, except he healed a few people with some chronic illnesses, all right? So it kind of throws that in there, all right? And it says that Jesus was amazed at their unbelief. Thamazo, wondered. There was wonder to this thing. He's like, why in the world would you not believe? Why are you holding on to this? Which tells us a lot about people, doesn't it? I mean, they've got Jesus, they've got the Messiah, they've got the Christ right there in front of him, teaching these amazing things, doing these amazing miracles, and yet why can't they just go, that's awesome? Today, these scriptures, Isaiah 61, is fulfilled right here with one of our own hometown boys. That's awesome. Welcome home, Jesus. Put up the sign outside the city limits, birthplace or hometown of Jesus. But why do they not? What's the profound, principled, great theological reasons why they just can't accept this? There isn't. It's just petty. It's petty, little hometown stuff. Go ahead. You think so? Yeah. Yeah, we know him. We knew who he was growing up, right? Yeah. And isn't that sad that because what is it within us that causes that? Is it something profound or is it childish? Is it petty? Is it, well, yeah, I grew up here too, and no, he's all this, and I'm still this. And so how can I get him to be the same as me? Well, I've got to knock him down and chop him down to my level so that I don't feel like such a loser. Remember where he's coming from. What's the reputation? How many successful, wonderful Ivy Leaguers come out of Nazareth High School? No. So what do you, exactly, Eric. So what do you do when he does come back? You try and throw him off a cliff eventually, which is really cool because they try and throw him off a cliff, but he passed right through the crowd and went on his way. One of those moments where I just want the DVD. I want the video of that one. I just want to see what that looked like or how he just sort of walked right through the crowd when they're trying to throw him off a cliff, okay? So that's how we start. 14. Uh-oh, I just broke my mic. Hold on. All right, 14. Come on, there it is. All right. At that time, or in that season, kairos. All right, remember we have two words for time, kairos, and what else? Chronos. Very good, chronology. All right. All right, at that time, Herod the Tetrarch heard the report. All right, he heard something about Jesus. Okay, he's getting rumors. He's getting stuff. He's getting rumors of all this stuff about Jesus. What do you think he's hearing? What do you think Herod the Tetrarch, the ruler, the Jew? Well, He's not the Jewish ruler. He's the Idumean that got put over the Jewish people, all right? What do you think he's hearing? What are these reports? That's not hard. Miracles, okay? Yeah, any different than what the people of Nazareth were hearing? The wisdom and the miracles? Probably not. But it's striking. It's astonishing what they are hearing, okay? So he's hearing these reports about Jesus. Look at what he does immediately in verse 2. This is John the Baptist, he told his servants. Now, why does he think it's John the Baptist? Now, what you need to understand is John is already dead, okay? Please don't think because we're going to hit verse 3 and we're going to tell the story of how John the Baptist died, okay? Don't go chronologically on this, that in 1 and 2, John the Baptist is alive and he's going to be killed down here in verse 10, okay? No, he's dead already, okay? We're going to have a retelling of the way he died in 3 through, 11 or so, okay? So he's saying this is John the Baptist. He has been raised from the dead, and that is why he has these supernatural powers at work, energized, energeo, inside working in him, all right? So what does this tell you about Herod? What does he believe? Who would have this knowledge and who would have these powers? That could not be a human, right? This has to be something different, right? Some people, you can see in Mark and Luke's, is they think he's Elijah. They think Jesus is Elijah, all right? And then they go, maybe he's just one of the other prophets. Why? Because his message is so strong and the miracles he's doing is so strong because Elijah did all these miracles. And he has to have come back from the dead, right, to be able to exude these powers and to be able to do these things, all right? And I think, in Luke's version, he says, and he wanted to see him. Herod wanted to see Jesus, wanted to meet Jesus. Now, he eventually does meet him when? When does Herod eventually get to meet Jesus? Not a hard one. What's that? Yeah, it is trials. Remember, Pilate goes, oh, you're a Galilean? Go take him to Herod. And what does Jesus do with Herod? Sits there. Doesn't say a word. Herod goes, get out of here. You're boring. You're boring. I thought you were interesting. I thought you would do something. I thought you would do some miracles. But go back to Pilate. All right? And then Pilate hands him over to be crucified. Okay? So he wants to see him because he's fascinated by this guy. He is very interested in this guy. Is he afraid of Jesus? Okay, if you think that somebody is somebody you had beheaded come back to life, would you be afraid of him? I would. If I had somebody beheaded and I actually thought they had come back to life and were able to do miraculous things, yeah, I'm scared. Yeah, he was. We'll get to that. We'll get to that here in a second. So yeah, I'm going to be scared of him. All right? I'm going to be like, sorry about that, man. I didn't know you were going to come back to life and do miracles and make me have 14 ears or something. All right? All right, 3. So here's the explanation. So we have this thing of Herod hears about Jesus, and he goes, that's got to be John the Baptist, raised from the dead. That's why he's able to do all this crazy stuff. And you see in verse 3, starts with the word what? 4. Let me explain. Here's what happened. All right? Here's the... Herod had arrested John, chained him, and put him in prison on account of Herodias, his brother Philip's wife, since John had been telling him, it's not lawful for you to have her, okay? Now, that's an interesting word. We don't know exactly the extent of the word have, all right? This is the same word that's used in 1 Corinthians 5 when a man has his father's wife. Same idea, okay? All right? 5, this gets interesting. Though he, meaning who? Who's the he here? Herod, wanted to kill him. His will, his telos, wanted to kill him. He feared the crowd since they regarded or held him as a prophet. Okay? Now, interesting, look down here in Mark. In 19, says, so Herodias held a grudge against him and wanted to kill him, but she could not. So who wants to kill him? Herod or Herodias? Herodias does. But according to Matthew's, who wants to kill him? Herod does. But he can't because he's afraid of the crowd because they think they're holding him as a prophet. Okay? So just interesting little dynamic there. All right? Because Mark says, because like Chris was referring to, Herod thought John, he was in awe of him. Okay? He was protecting him. He thought he was righteous and holy. And he would go call on him, and John would tell him, you're wrong, you're wrong, you're wrong. You shouldn't be doing this, you shouldn't be doing this. He'd get all mad, and then he could bring him back. There's some truth to what he's saying. There's something to what he's saying. It's one of the weird dynamics. We see this with the commanders when Paul is in prison. All right? They keep wanting to set him free, but they keep going, nah, I got to hear what he's saying. There's something there. He's saying something, okay? Okay. Verse 6, but when Herod's birthday celebration came, Herodias' daughter danced before them and pleased Herod. So he promised with an oath to give her whatever she might ask. And prompted by her, what? Her mother, who wanted to kill him because she's the one who left Philip to go to Herod, all that. She answered, give me John the Baptist's head here on a platter. Although the king regretted it. It's a Greek word lupeo. Lupeo is grieved, to be distressed or to be overtly grieved and very grievous. All right? Although he regretted it, he commanded that it be granted because of his oaths and his guests didn't want to be embarrassed. So he sent orders and had John beheaded in the prison. His head was brought on a platter and given to the girl, who carried it to her mother. 12. Then his disciples, whose disciples? John's disciples, okay? In the chosen, you can see how Andrew and John the Baptist have this connection. Andrew and John, they never do it with John. I don't understand why they don't do this in the chosen. It's very emphatic that Andrew was John's disciple. But John was just as much, and they never connect that, so I don't know why, okay? So you see this connection. Andrew was initially one of John the Baptist, but he has his own disciples. And so his disciples come, remove the corpse, bury it, went, and do what? Report it to Jesus. How does Jesus respond to this? You think he weeps? Okay. Grieved? Is he sad? Should he be sad? Shouldn't he go, well, that was the plan. Okay. What else? Yeah, I mean, this is part of the process. So is he disaffected in the sense of this was the plan, so I'm not going to weep over this, I'm not going to be upset about it? Or is he genuinely, humanly grieving over the death of John the Baptist? Yeah. Mhm. So you think they had a connection throughout their life? Do you have any evidence of that? Josh, say no. Because there isn't any. There really isn't any. The only thing we get is when Jesus does come on the scene, John points him and says, behold the Lamb of God who takes away the sin of the world. And when he comes to be baptized, he goes, no, I should be baptized by you, you not by me. And Jesus goes, hey, just allow it for now. So I would say there is an implicit connection that they have had, or there's some understanding. Eventually, later on, he's going to send for Jesus and say, hey, are you the one, or should we wait for another? Or am I just misled? Or am I not understanding who you are? But we don't have any solid connection beyond that. So I think, yeah, I think Elizabeth's dead and gone. She was too old to still be on the scene, but you never know. We just don't know. We don't know. All right. So reported this to Jesus, okay? So let's keep going with this. 13. When Jesus heard about it. Here's the question. What's it? When Jesus heard about it, he did what? He did what? Withdrew from there by a boat to a remote place to be alone. Okay? So, again, my question, what is it? What are the options? John the Baptist is dead. I think that's kind of the sort of the obvious one from the text. But remember, the death of John the Baptist is not in real time. This is a previous event. Herod finds out. Herod says, this is John the Baptist raised from the dead that's going on right now. I want to see him. So if you back off the death of John the Baptist, now I understand they report it to Jesus, and the next line is when Jesus heard about it. So that's why I said the obvious implied answer is the death of John the Baptist. But could it be other things? Could it be that Herod wanted to see him? Herod wants to see you, and what does he do? Withdraws. Okay? John the Baptist is dead. I want to withdraw and pray. Both easily good answers? I think so. Anybody ever read Max Lucado's book in the Calm of the Storm or something like that? It's one of his first books. He tells the story from the perspective of Herod is looking for him, John the Baptist dead, but he throws in another option, which you see here in Mark and Luke's. Look at what Mark and Luke. The apostles gathered around Jesus and reported to him all they had done and taught. When? When he sent them out. Remember? He sends them out, and they go do all these amazing things. And they've been on the mission field. They've been on the mission trip for a couple of months or whatever. So they come back, report to him all they've done, and he said to them, come away by yourselves to a remote place. Luke says it practically the same way. When the apostles returned, they reported Jesus all they had done. He took them along and withdrew privately to a town called Bethsaida. So do we have a third option on the table? The disciples have come back. So in the midst of all this, it could be the possibility that when John the Baptist was killed, who was with Jesus? When Jesus got the report, who was with him to help him, to support him, to encourage him? Could have been nobody. It could have been he hears Herod is looking for him. He hears about the death of John the Baptist, and then his disciples come walking up, all in this moment. And this is kind of the picture Max Lucado is painting in this. And I want to say it's Calm of the Storm. I can't remember. It's got like clouds all over the front cover. I just remember that, all right? But he paints this picture of Jesus when he withdraws, has all of these factors coming down on him. So after he feeds the 5,000, what does he do with his disciples? Go away. What does he do with the 5,000? Go away. And what does he do? He goes and prays. Why? Because Herod's looking for him. John is dead. And the disciples just got back and telling him all these amazing things. Do you see how this convergence, that this is what Max Lucado is painting the picture of? I don't know that I can jump in on all that, but I think all three options are viable, all right? And I think all of them would be stressful, and all of them would be things I need to get away and pray about, okay? So in 13, when Jesus heard about it, let's just leave it at it, he withdrew from there by a boat to a remote place, to a wilderness, eremos, to be alone, idios, to be with me, to be just me. I'm going to own this thing. It's going to be only me right here, all right? How successful was he? Look in Mark's gospel. In Mark's, he said to them, come away by yourselves to a remote place, rest for a while. All right, remember, he's talking to his disciples who've been on the mission trip. For many people were coming and going, and they did not even have time to eat. All right? So you feel the hustle and bustle of this. And again, throw in John's disciples coming with this. Herod's looking for you. And he goes, that's it. We got to go. All right? This is me going, hello, Ryu. Do you have a room for me in Cancun, in Mexico? All right? because I need to get out of here for a couple of days, okay? So this is what he's doing. Tries to get alone. When the crowds heard this, they followed him on foot from the towns. And as he stepped ashore, he beheld a huge crowd, polis aklos, all right? He felt compassion, splagnizomai. He felt splagnizomai. We get a word spleen from this, all right? His bowels ached, all right? Have you ever looked at someone and had compassion on them and you went, oh, I just hurt for them, and your stomach just aches? That's the implication. That's the euphemism that's used here, and it's used throughout. Anytime we get that word compassion, pretty much it's always that inner gut feeling, all right? And he healed their sick. When evening came, very important, all right? So get your timing here, because every time we do the feeding of the 5,000, what time of day is it? What time of day is it? It's the middle of the day, isn't it? In the sun out. Have you ever seen it where it's like sunset feeding of the 5,000? No, we never see that. But when evening came, the disciples approached him and said, this place is a wilderness, eremos, and it is already, what time? Late. It is late in the day. The hour is passing. The hour is passing away. Send the crowds away, apoluo, let them loose, so they can go into the villages and buy food for themselves. They don't need to go away, Jesus told them. You give them something to eat. Where have the disciples been, and what have they been doing? Doing miracles, casting out demons, healing the sick, doing all this amazing stuff. And Jesus goes, I haven't retracted that power. You give them something to eat. And do they immediately go, all right, somebody get the menu. Let's call on God and bring down manna from heaven on these people? No. What have they resorted back to? How many times do we do this when we get back into a situation where we're underneath that authority figure again? Sometimes college students, when they come back home from school, they've been just killing it in their school, in their career, and all this stuff. They get back home, and what do they? They resort back to child. Mine do this. It's weird. I'm like, okay, you're like a functioning human being at school. You do really good things. You're good at your job. You do this, and you come here, and you just immediately bust into video games for like 18 hours a day. And I'm like, no, get out of my house. Go back to school where you're a productive human being, and you actually do things that are good, okay? Isn't this what they do? You give them something. But we only have 5 loaves and 2 fish here. And we stole that from some little kid. All right? Bringing them here to me. What kind of tone do you think he said that in? He said, oh, bringest thou unto me. Get him over here. I thought you guys had it. I thought you were on your way with this. No, you don't even see it. Bring them to me. Bring them here to me. Then he commanded the crowds to sit down in the grass, took the 5 loaves and 2 fish, and looking up to heaven, he blessed them and broke the loaves and gave them to the disciples. And the disciples gave them to the crowds. Everyone ate and was filled. Then they picked up 12 baskets full of leftover pieces. Really cool moment here, okay? Why? How many baskets? How many disciples? Who didn't have time to eat earlier in the day? And now guess what? They were picking up 12 little baskets, 12 lunch boxes. It's called a kofinos. A kofinos is a small basket that you could hold that would be a provision that you would bring your lunch in. And so the ones who did not have time to eat, Jesus says, come away, and the leftovers that they pick up, because some people go, oh, the 12 baskets full of, laundry baskets full of leftovers. 12 small baskets, just enough for who? The disciples. Why? Because they didn't have time to eat earlier in the day. Isn't that cool that Jesus provides for this? Now, when we feed the 4,000 in a couple of chapters, they're going to pick up 12 baskets. And it's the basket. Remember when Paul is lowered over the wall in Damascus? All right? A human-sized basket. They pick up 7 large baskets on that occasion. So it's a different dynamic, 12 little lunch boxes of leftovers here. All right. Now, those who ate were about 5,000 men besides women and children. I like to say 5,000 families. Just kind of makes it make a little more sense to me. All right. John has a lot more on that. If you want to read in John, the aftermath of that, John 6, this is where it rolls into the conversation of, if you want to follow me, you have to eat my flesh and drink my blood. And many of the disciples leave him at this point. This is the aftermath of that. So if you want to look into John 6, that tells you a lot more in there. Okay? 22, let's roll right through this. Immediately, he made the disciples get into the boat. Okay? That's a strong word right there. That's not he asked them to. He said, why don't you, if you don't mind. No, he made them. He forced them. And okay, he made them get into the boat and go ahead of him to the other side while he dismissed the crowds. Okay? Now, if you're just going to the other side, so Jesus is going to stay on this side. Now, you got to remember, we're on the Sea of Galilee, okay? And so you just crisscross this thing, okay? And it's a couple of miles across. So, I mean, it's a decent-sized lake, okay? And so he's going back and forth, and he gets them in and says, go. I'll stay here on this side. You guys go. Get in the boats and go. And he forces them to get in there, and they go to the other side. He dismisses the crowd, apoluo, looses the crowd. And after dismissing him, he went up on the mountain by himself, idios. All right, same word when he said what? Let's withdraw so I can be alone. And finally, he does. Finally, he gets alone by himself to pray. About what? What does he have to pray about in this moment? Anything? Anything on his radar? Or is he just going to just go hang out with God for a little bit? Anything pressing on him? Herod is looking for you. John is now dead, and his disciples have no rabbi any longer. How do we deal with all that? His disciples just came back from doing all these miraculous things, these amazing things. How are they going to handle this? They didn't handle the feeding of the 5,000 all that well. So does he have anything to pray about? And what time is it? All right, look at this. When evening came, he was there alone. So give me a time. Evening came. 5:30? Yeah. I want to say you're a little early on that, but that's okay. You're just extending the time that I'm going to make a point about here in just a second. All right? So even if it's 7, 8 o'clock, again, I'm just throwing a number out here. All right? He's going to start praying 8 o'clock at the latest, all right? Then it says in verse 2, but the boat was already over a mile from land, battered by the waves because the wind was against him. In verse 25, look at this, around 3 in the morning, okay? Now in the text, it's around the 4th watch of the night, okay? How long has Jesus been praying? Kind of like you, right? You know, you settle in around 8 o'clock, just get on your knees and you start to cry out to God, and it's like 3 in the morning. You're like, I should probably get up and do something. Right? Is that your prayer life, Trey? You're not rolling 7 hours later? 7 hours, man, 7 hours later, I'd be praying for people like from elementary school. I'm just pulling names out of a hat at this point. Yeah, 7 hours. Just let that sink in. Let that sink in. That Jesus, the Son of God, fully God, fully man, prayed for 7 hours. I mean, think about Gethsemane. How long does he pray in Gethsemane? We got at least 3 hours. In Mark 1, it says very early, Jesus got up and left the house while it was still dark and to pray. And eventually they find Jesus out in the Eremos and go, everybody is looking for you. Now, how long is that? From dark until everybody's looking for you and I found you. Do you see these occasions? How long was Jesus praying? I hope that challenges you. I really do. I hope that challenges you. All right? Now, let's get back to the boys. The boat was a mile from land, a mile on water, pretty good distance, right? Yes? Yeah. Well, it's probably well over, well, no, I'm sorry, probably not quite middle yet, okay? And okay, now a lot of people like to paint the picture that this was a massive storm, and you got lightning bolts and rain going everywhere, and you got the waves and the wind and everything, and Peter's like can barely see Jesus, and he's trying to walk on all this stuff. What does the text say? Okay, and that's why I want you to be very careful with this, because if the text doesn't say it, you got to quit making it up. It's like the people of Noah's day banging on the ark saying, please let me in, or the people making fun of Noah as he's building the ark, both of which are not in the Bible. Okay? There's no text of they were making fun of Noah. There's no text of them banging on the ark. Nothing. But yet we include that. It's like the priest on the Yom Kippur when he goes into the temple and he has the bell attached to him, right? No, he doesn't. It's not in the Bible. It's not in any text. Some Sunday school teacher made that up, and it just got repeated and repeated and repeated until we all go, oh, yeah, I remember that. No. All right? So what does the text say? They were a mile from land, battered by the waves, because the wind was what? Against. Now, how dramatic is that? Don't you hate it when the wind is against you? Shane, you like running. You like running when the wind's against you? Now, is that blowing you over into the road and it knocking you off into the sidewalk? No, if the wind's just in your face, it makes it hard, okay? I've got the lake at my house. I like to go kayaking out there on it. But I hate going against the wind because it's like I'm just like on a treadmill, just going and going, and I'm not going anywhere. Why? Because there's a massive storm blowing and lightning bolts are everywhere and the waves are crashing and capsizing my... No. They were trying to get from point A to point B, and the wind was against them. Now, what do you do in the first century when your boat is encountering winds that are against you? You row. And how far do you get? After 7 to 8 hours, you get 1 mile. Now imagine 12 guys in a boat, and 8 hours later, you've gone 1 mile. How are we getting along at this point? It's 3 a.m. You've been rowing for 8 hours, and you're 1 mile away from where you started because the wind and the waves are against you. And it's interesting. It says they were battered by the winds. It literally means they were tormented. It's almost like God was going, watch this. I'm going to keep the wind and the waves coming at them so they don't get anywhere. What kind of mood are they in at this point? Huh? Is this a good time? Are we having fun yet? Can you imagine them? Scoot over. Get out of there. You're so weak. Why are you so weak? I'll do it. They don't get anywhere. Oh, Mr. Big, I'm not weak. You're weak. Can you imagine, guys? All right? This is where I go in my mind with the disciples. Just watch. That's why the Chosen kind of resonates with me, because I've always had this sort of fraternal camaraderie amongst the disciples where they kind of dogged each other and I have them in the boat and they're just mad at each other and everybody's upset with each other and they're calling each other names and all this stuff. And they're rowing and they're rowing. And Jesus looks up and he sees them. He beheld them, all right? And he sees all this going around. 25 says around 3 a.m, he came toward them walking on the sea. All right. Now, in Mark's, actually in verse 48, it says he came to him walking and desired wanted to go around them. Para, erkomai. Para, next to, erkomai, go. He wanted to just keep on walking. That's funny, all right? I don't know if y'all get the humor in that, but can you imagine Jesus walking by on the sea? Hey, guys. Just keeps right on walking past them. That's what he wanted to do, according to Mark. Now, who gave Mark that information? Peter does. So Peter goes, he was walking and he was going to just keep walking right on by us. All right? That's funny to me. I don't know. Maybe that's just my sense of humor. All right? So he comes walking toward them. When the disciples saw him walking on the sea in a really good mood from rowing for 8 hours and getting 1 mile, they were terrified, terrasso. They were freaked out, all right? It's a ghost, a phantasma, they said, and cried out in fear. Immediately, Jesus spoke to them because Jesus goes, I can't let them, they're going to have a heart attack. They're going to freak out. All right, they're screaming like little junior high girls in the boat here. I got to calm them down. Have courage. It is I. Do not be afraid. To which they did what? Oh. And they calmed down, right? Who is me? Who is me? I don't know who you are. Oh, eventually, they get to, it's Jesus. Now, anybody sort of dogging on anybody in the boat for the way they screamed when they saw the ghost? Guys, y'all with me? If you're in a boat and you think a ghost is coming and your partner over here is crying out in fear, all right, and then everybody calms down after a while, are you giving anybody a hard time about what they did? Absolutely. You cannot pass that up. So you got to be picking on them. And they're kind of, now imagine the sort of tone of the boat. Are they kind of laughing at this point? Are they freaking out? Are they laughing at each other, picking on each other? Or I don't know what the tone is, but I think it's kind of light after a while. But they're kind of freaking out that Jesus was walking on the water, and they kind of relax a little bit and are kind of picking and doing all this stuff. And then all of a sudden, what do they hear? Lord, if it's you, command me to come to you on the water. Who's not joking around in the boat? Who is absolutely in awe? Who wants to be out there and not in here? You see what I'm saying? So Jesus says, have courage, it's I, don't be afraid. And they're like, oh, can you believe I said that? And I thought it was just something I know. And Peter is absolutely stoic in this moment. He goes, Lord, let me come out there. Now, what do the 11 think in this moment? I'm sorry, what? What? Peter, you can't do that. What are you thinking, Peter? Do they wish they had said it? I mean, in that initial moment, you go, what's he doing? But after a while, you're going, why didn't I? What does Peter see? What does Peter feel in this moment that I don't? And why don't I? I think that's a great question for all of us. When we see somebody jumping out there, going on mission trips, going on things, reaching their coworkers, bringing people to church all the time, doing all of this stuff, doing Christianity, and doing it really, really well, there's something in us that should be going, why am I not doing this? But what's our natural, rebellious, petty tendency? Oh, they're just showing off. They're just super Christian over there. They're this. Why? Because we want to bring them back down to our level so we don't feel as bad. Does that sound like Nazareth again? I just wonder what they thought. That's, again, another video. I want to see the video of that one. All right? Come on. I love this. Jesus says what? Bid me to come. Command me to come out. And Jesus, come on. Which to me says he would have done that for any of them. That it wasn't this, well, I don't know. Well, you are one of my favorites, Peter. Well, you only, I don't know about the rest of you. Peter, yes, you can go. No, I think you should come on. He wants us out of that boat. Come, he said, climbing out of the boat. Okay, now you understand, these are probably about 25-foot boats, 20 to 25-foot boats. They're very deep, all right? Remember, Jesus goes to sleep in the bottom of one of these, okay? So they're very deep, and it's always, I'm climbing out, I'm climbing in. It's not like I rolled in or whatever. It's not like a pontoon boat or something, okay? So climbs out of the boat, and Peter started walking on the water. How? How is he doing this? Is it his faith? Is his faith empowering this supernatural event? No. No. God is supernaturally creating something in nature in this moment where water feet and it doesn't sink, all right? I don't know what that is. God is doing something, all right? Does Peter have the faith to get out of the boat? Yes, but I'm sorry, your faith doesn't create supernatural moments. Your faith interacting with God's supernatural sovereignty creates miraculous moments, okay? So Peter started walking on the water and came toward Jesus. But, now, again, came toward Jesus, the one who's been walking on the water for a good mile, standing in the water, going, come on, all right? When he saw the strength of the wind, he was afraid. He literally saw the strength, the eskuo, the power of the wind. All right? So maybe he's feeling it on him, and all of a sudden he sees something natural, and what happens? Fear. What had he just said 4 seconds ago? Lord, command me to come out there. Come on. I'm looking at this. And what distracts Peter away from him? He saw what? The wind? That's what distracts him? That's what makes him go, oh, I don't know about Jesus now because the wind is so strong in my face. Can you imagine the regret? Did he let the wind distract him away from the one who said, come out here? The God who controls the wind? He's seen the wind and waves calm with a word, right? That's in the past. He's seen what God can do. He's seen what Christ can do. And yet, he allows the wind. He sees the wind and he begins to be afraid. What's the effect of fear on your faith? Fear and faith are both a belief in what's going to happen next. One's positive, one's negative. One's confident in the one who holds the future, and one's a lack of confidence in the one who holds the future. So he sees it, and he becomes afraid and beginning to sink. Why is he beginning to sink? Why was he walking on water? Why is he no longer walking on water? I don't think it's because he took his eyes off Jesus. I think that was the first step. And again, don't read into the text that he took his eyes off Jesus. Okay, because we do that, right? Right? He saw the wind, he saw the strength of the wind, and he became afraid. And when he became afraid, his faith went, I don't trust, I don't have confidence any longer. Why does he begin to sink? The same reason he wasn't sinking. The supernatural hand of God went, I'm going to let you sink. Was it because of his faith or lack of his faith? No, it was God saying, you know what? I'm not going to allow you to succeed in your fear. You're going to have faith, and I'm going to let you experience defeat if you won't have faith in me, if you lose sight of what I can do. I'll let you continue in your faith, but I'm not going to let you succeed in your fear. And beginning to sink, he cried out, Lord, save me. Immediately, Jesus reached out his hand, caught hold of him, and said to him, you of little faith. Now, I don't know how far Jesus reached out his arm, but anybody ever jump in a pool? How long does it take you to go from your feet, your toes touching the water, to totally underwater? Is that like a slow motion? Ooh. And Peter began to slowly ooze into the water. No, what happens when you are no longer walking on water? How close was Jesus? That's why I say, don't go with he took his eyes off Jesus. No, I think he was like here to Jesus. Why? Because Jesus reached out his hand, unless he's like Plastic Man or whatever. All right? I think he was right there. He grabs him. Look at this. I love this. Caught hold of him and said to him, you of little faith, why did you doubt? Distazo. Disazo means to be in two places at one time, that your mind is in two places. I'm walking on water. I'm walking on water. I can't do this. The strength of the wind around me is distracting me from I'm walking on water. I got my mind in two places. This is what he's saying, all right? Now, that's nice of Jesus and all this stuff. Where were they when they were having this conversation? On the water. Because what's the next line say? When they got into the boat, the wind ceased. So not only is he having this conversation on the water, standing there with him, all right, the wind is still blowing. The wind hasn't gone anywhere yet. And he's having, why did you doubt? Why would Jesus ask that question? It's obvious, Jesus, because I'm human and I don't generally walk on water. All right? What is the expectation of Jesus? That you would do this, that you could do this. Then those in the boat worshiped, proskuneo, fell down, bowed down, and said, truly, you are the Son of God. Now, interesting. Mark, what does he say about Peter walking on water? You go from verse 50, have courage as I, don't be afraid. 51, then he got in the boat with them, and the wind ceased. What did Mark leave out of his gospel? Let me say it in a different way. What did Peter not tell Mark about this moment in time? Now, to me, it could go either way. I walked on water for a while, and then I didn't have faith. John does what? No mention of it. You would think John, if he wanted to take a shot at Peter, because doesn't he take shots at Peter from time to time? Right? We ran to the tomb. I outran him, just in case you were wondering. Okay? Does John want to give him credit for walking on water? Or does he want to take a shot at him for sinking? Or does he just go, you know what? I'm just going to let this slide. Luke doesn't even discuss the whole nature of anybody walking on water. And he was probably a ship's doctor. That's kind of what the doctors of this day were. The slave doctors were these. So I think I think Luke thought his Greek audience would have no idea what to do with this. And so he just goes, you know what? We're just going to let that slide. All right? I'm just going to let that go. Okay? All right, let's finish this. 34. Once they crossed over, they came to the land of Gennesaret. When the men of that place recognized him, they alerted the whole vicinity and brought to him all who were sick. All right? All who were having kakos, harm. They were begging him that they might only touch the tassel, all right, the crespidon on his robe. And as many as touched it were made perfectly well, thoroughly well, dia sozo, thoroughly saved, completely, all the way across saved. All right? Where'd they get this tassel thing? Who else reached for the tassel, the crespidon, the wing? Yeah, the lady with bleeding. Exact same scenario, exact same thing. They touch the tassel. And this goes back to Malachi. The Son of Man will come with healing on his wings, on the edges, the tassels of his garment. So, all right? So that was a fun day. All right? Can you imagine being in that day? That's always a good day right there. All right? Think through those. And again, read between the lines. Again, read slowly, read deliberately, pause when you need to, so you kind of go, let me get a feel for that. What's going on here? Okay? All right, let's pray. Father, thank you so much for just the inspiration that you gave to Matthew and Mark and Luke and Peter to jump in there with Mark and to write this stuff, and even John later on, just covering some of these things. I thank you that you have preserved these scriptures for us so that we could understand, know more of your character, but also know more of our character. Father, I pray for these disciples here today, that they see themselves in Scripture, that they see the faults, that they see the shortcomings of all these characters, and they want to be more. They want to have a deeper and more beautiful, intimate relationship with you so they can have that faith in you that pleases you, that strives for the beautiful, amazing things, and that they would do amazing things with every breath that they have here on this earth. And I pray all this in Jesus' name. Amen.